I'm going to give you a lecture today on the books written about John Quincy Adams by the very famous Yale professor Samuel Flagg Bemis. Now, with typical undergraduate humor, he was immediately, if you told somebody you were taking Bemis's course, somebody immediately said, "Oh yeah, Samuel waved the flag, right?" And I said, "Yes, that's true." Now, his main forte, of course, was diplomatic. Bemis was the main man in diplomatic history. And somebody immediately said, "Well, did you ever take his course?" Well, I ordered it. If I took it, and somebody said, "Well, what kind of grade did you get?" Well, I didn't get a grade. I simply sat in the back. And the much to know about Bemis, the author of these volumes, is we're sitting in a discussion group one day, and he's holding forth, and all of a sudden he said, "Well, how many of you in this room want to be President of the United States?" Not a hand was raised. Well, I thought the good professor was going to have a stroke. He sort of wandered around and got over that thing. But in the preface to the volume, one of the volumes I'm going to discuss, Bemis said there are not very many people in the United States who really, from the get-go, wanted to be president. And then he ticked off John Quincy Adams. The next guy was Theodore Roosevelt, Woodrow Wilson, and Franklin D. Roosevelt. I think I've forgotten somebody, but I don't think so. So this is what he's saying in his books, that not too many people got the job that really wanted it. And one of the interesting things that comes up in those books is the fact that had people, well, after Quincy Adams' presidency, you had a whole bunch of people. You had Daniel Webster in Massachusetts. You had Henry Clay right here in Kentucky. And you had John C. Calhoun. And all of a sudden I'm thinking, oh, these guys, they figure out the whole thing's going to work, meaning the democracy that we established after the revolution. So, you got to say that there are a lot of people who really wanted to be, but few of them got there. Now, what I'm going to talk to you about this morning, give you a rundown of J.Q. Adams. He was born on July the 11th, 1767, and passed away February 23rd, 1848, at the age of 80. Now, here's a guy that basically had 3 careers. At the age of 11, his father, John Adams, took him to Europe. And basically, eventually, Quincy Adams went to Harvard and was awarded a bachelor's degree by that university. But my point, you may want to think about this and argue about it, but Adams really got his education in Europe. And what came out of that was his belief that we should stay away from anything that went on in Europe, because all we had was a bunch of wars. One of 3 children born to John and Abigail. And J.Q. had, he had a sister, Abigail, named after, of course, the mother, and Charles, the brother. And there was another brother, Thomas Boylston, brother. Isn't that the name of a street in Boston? Runs behind Fenwick Park, I think. So anyway, Sam Adams. And there's a little bit of discussion about what was Sam to John Quincy Adams. You don't really, Bemis doesn't make a point out of giving Sam Adams a lot of ink. So what I finally figured out that John Quincy Adams was a second cousin twice removed to Sam. And that's what we hear about Sam. So we'll move on and talk about John Quincy Adams. One of the interesting things that comes up in the book, and the book that I'm dealing with almost specifically is Bemis's book. It's one of 2 volumes, and it's entitled John Quincy Adams and the Foundation of American Foreign Policy. And this, plus the years that Adams spent in the Congress as a representative from Massachusetts, were considerably more brilliant than what you have to look at as a failed presidency. He was elected in 1824 to 1828, and 2 things happened during that presidency that basically left him high and dry. One was the deal down in Georgia with the Indian tribes, and the Georgians didn't want these people, so they backed them up and moved them out. And Adams was very much against that, but he couldn't do anything. He got voted down. Now, the other thing was the tariff. The South really wanted very low tariffs, and Adams, and of course some of the Congress, sort of, well, gee whiz, tariffs are one of the main sources of income and money to run the government. But the South kind of scotched that, and I think the tariff that was passed was immediately dubbed the tariff of the abominations, which gave a lot of rage to the South. And with that, I think Adams pretty much gave up in trying to run an innovative or forceful presidency. And of course, his election was not by the electoral college. He didn't get enough votes, and there was a tie, and the thing ran into, he was elected by the House of Representatives. So really, almost from the get-go, you've got a minority president. And of course, you had Andrew Jackson out there who was disappointed. He was running against Adams in the election of that year, presidential election. So he was lurking in the background, plus a lot of vote people. I mentioned Henry Clay and that crowd.